Do you feel nervous when you go to a restaurant in an English-speaking country? Do you worry about what to say when you arrive or how to order your food? Today, we're going to help you feel completely confident. Hello, everyone, and welcome to Sonic Sage English. I'm Julia, your host, and it's fantastic to have you here for this very special episode. It's very special indeed. Today, we're talking all about restaurants and cafes, but we're going to do it in a new and exciting way. That's right. This episode has two levels. We're starting a new journey together. For the beginning of our episode today, I'm going to teach you the essentials. The essentials, that means the most important and necessary words and phrases you need to know. I'll keep the language very clear and simple at an A2 to B1 level. This will be your survival guide. With this first part of the guide, you'll be able to go to any restaurant and feel okay. You'll be able to get a table and understand what's happening. Exactly. But then, we're going to do something new after we learn the basics. We're going to change levels. Yes. Later in the episode, we'll switch to a C1 advanced level. We'll talk about the same situations, but with the complex vocabulary, idioms, and cultural details that native speakers use. It will be like a master class. So, you can listen to this first part to build your confidence and learn the basic tools, and then listen to the second part to reach for fluency. It's a complete guide. I'm very excited about this new format, and I hope you enjoy it. So, are you ready to begin our journey at the simple, essential level? I'm ready. Let's start at the very beginning. The most logical first step. We walk up to the door of a restaurant. We open it and go inside. What's the first thing we do? The first thing you'll usually see is a person standing near the door, often at a small desk or podium. This person's job is to greet you and help you find a table. We call this person a host if it's a man, or a hostess if it's a woman. The host or hostess, their job is to welcome you and manage the tables. Yes, they are the first point of contact. So, you should walk towards them, make eye contact, and smile. A smile is always a great start. It's a universal welcome. A smile says, "Hello, I'm a friendly customer." It creates a very positive atmosphere right from the start. It does. So, I smile. And then what do I say? You need to say the most important phrase of this situation. It's very simple, very clear, and very polite. You say, "A table for two, please." A table for two, please? Let's break that down. A table is what you want. For two means for two people, you and your companion. And the magic word at the end, please, makes it polite. This one short sentence gives the host all the information they need to begin helping you. It's a perfect sentence. It's efficient and polite. Let's practice it again. A table for two, please. Excellent. Now, what if you're with more people? This is very important. You just change the number in the sentence. So, if I'm with three of my friends, we're a group of four people in total. I would say, "A table for four, please." Exactly. Or if you're with a big group, for example, 5 people, "A table for 5, please." This is easy to change. You just need to count the people in your group, including yourself. It is. Now, what if you're eating by yourself? Many people travel or eat alone. What do you say then? If you're alone, you can say, "A table for one, please." A table for one, please. Perfect. So, this phrase is like a magic key. It works for any number of people. It's the first step to a successful restaurant visit. So, I say my magic phrase, What will the host or hostess say back to me? They might say a few different things. Let's imagine the simplest situation. The restaurant is not busy, and there are many free tables. Okay, that's the best case scenario. Yes, in this case, they might just smile and say, "Of course, this way, please." Or they might say, "Certainly, follow me, please." This way, please, and that means you should follow them to your table. Exactly. It's that simple. You follow them, they show you your table, and you can sit down. But sometimes, especially on a Friday or Saturday night, the restaurant is very busy. Yes, this is a very common situation. In this case, the host might ask you a question. A very common question is, do you have a reservation? A reservation, that's an important word. Let's talk more about that. What does it mean? A reservation, which is also called a booking, is when you call the restaurant before you go. You call in the morning or the day before, and you book a table for a specific time. So you save a table for yourself. This is a good idea if it's a very popular restaurant or if it's a busy night. It is a very good idea. It guarantees you'll have a place to sit. So, if the host asks, "Do you have a reservation?" and you do, what do you say? You can say, "Yes, I do. It's under the name Julia." Perfect. You say yes, and you give your name. "It's under the name" is the key phrase. The host will check their book or their computer, and then they'll find your name and take you to your table. Okay, that's simple. If I have a reservation, but what if I didn't call before? What if I don't have a reservation? Then you simply say, "No, I don't." Or if you're in a group, "No, we don't." "No, we don't." And what will the host do then? Well, there are two possibilities. If they're busy but they still have a free table, they'll just say, "No problem. This way, please," and take you to a table. Okay, that is still a good outcome, but what if there are no free tables at that moment? Then they will be very polite, but they will tell you that you need to wait. They might say, "I'm sorry, there will be a short wait." A wait? That means you have to wait for another group to finish their meal so their table can become free. Yes, the host will often tell you how long the wait is. They might say the wait is about 20 minutes, or it will be about half an hour. This is their best guess. This information is very helpful. You can then decide if you want to wait or if you prefer to go to another restaurant. Exactly. You can say, "Okay, we will wait." And you can sit in the waiting area. Or you can say, "Oh, okay. Thank you anyway. Goodbye." And you can leave. That is very clear. So you need to be prepared for that question about a reservation. It is good to be prepared. Let's review that little conversation. The host asks, "Do you have a reservation?" If you do, you say, "Yes, I do. It's under the name Julia." And if you don't, you say, "No, we don't." And then you listen for how long the wait is. You see, you're ready for the most common questions. You have the language you need to get inside and get to your table. There is no need to feel nervous. I feel much more confident already. It's not as scary when you know the phrases and you can anticipate the questions. It's all about knowing those key phrases. They give you the power to navigate the situation calmly and politely. I think this is a perfect place to pause and do our first recap. I agree. Let's summarize the essential information about arriving at a restaurant. What was the main goal of our discussion so far? Our main goal was to learn the simple, essential phrases you need to enter a restaurant and ask for a table politely and confidently. Great. And what was the first thing we said is very important, even before you speak. The first thing is a warm, friendly smile. It creates a positive start to the interaction. And what is the one magic phrase you need to know to ask for a table? The magic phrase is a full sentence. For example, you can say, "A table for two, please," or you can say, "A table for three, please." You just change the number. Perfect. And what is the common question the host might ask you? They might ask, "Do you have a reservation?" You can answer, "Yes, it's under my name." Or you can say, "No, we don't." And you should be prepared to hear that there might be a wait. With just these simple tools, our listeners are now completely ready to handle the first and most important step of eating out. You can walk into that restaurant feeling prepared and not worried at all. That's a wonderful feeling. Knowing what to expect makes all the difference. So we have followed the host, we are at our table, and we have sat down. We did it. Yes, the first challenge is complete. But now the next part of the adventure begins. It does. Now it is time to think about the food. This is the main reason we came to the restaurant after all. Absolutely. So we have successfully covered arriving at the restaurant. Now let's focus on the main event, how to order your meal and how to pay at the end. These are the other essential skills you need. I am ready. This is the part I'm most excited about. So we are sitting at the table. What happens next? The person who will take care of you at your table will come to you. This person is called a waiter, if it is a man, or a waitress, if it is a woman. They will usually bring you the menu. The menu. The menu is the list of all the food and drinks available in the restaurant. Exactly. They might say, "Here are your menus." The waiter or waitress will also often ask you if you want to order a drink first. Yes, this happens a lot. They might say, "Can I get you something to drink to start?" That is a very common and friendly question. It is a good idea to decide on your drink first while you look at the food options. Okay, so this is our first time ordering something. It is our first chance to practice. What is the best and most polite phrase to use? There is a golden phrase that is perfect for ordering anything in a restaurant or a cafe. It is polite, it is clear, and it is what native speakers use all the time. A golden phrase, I'm excited to hear it. What is it? The phrase is, "I would like." I would like. Okay. Yes. You can also use the short form, which is very common in spoken English. I'd like. I'd like. So, if I want to order water, I can say, "I'd like some water, please." A perfect sentence. You used the golden phrase and you added the magic word "please" at the end. That is fantastic. Let's practice with another drink. Maybe a juice. "I'd like an orange juice, please." Excellent. You see how easy it is? You just put the name of the drink after the phrase "I'd like." Can I also use the phrase "can I have"? Yes, you can. "Can I have" is also very common and polite. For example, "Can I have a lemonade, please?" So, "I'd like" and "can I have" are both great choices. They are both perfect. "I would like" is perhaps a little more formal and classic, but both are excellent. So, you order your drinks, the waiter brings them to you. Now, you have had some time to look at the menu and decide on your food. Yes, I am hungry and I have chosen my meal. The waiter will come back to your table and ask, Are you ready to order, or what can I get for you? And now I can use my golden phrase again. Exactly the same phrase. It works for everything. So if you want to order a pizza, what do you say? I can say, I would like the pepperoni pizza, please. Perfect. And if you want to order the chicken with rice, I would like the chicken with rice, please. Or can I have the chicken with rice, please? You are an expert now, Julia. It is that simple. You use the same polite structure for everything. This should make our listeners feel very relieved. You don't need to learn many different phrases. Just one or two golden phrases is all you need. That is very good news. So we have ordered our food, we have enjoyed our delicious meal, the plates are empty, and we are happy. A very nice image. What is the final step of our restaurant visit? The final step is to pay for the meal. Yes, we need to ask for the bill. The bill is the piece of paper that shows how much money you need to pay for your food and drinks. In American English, people often call this the check. So you might hear a bill or check. They mean the same thing. That is a very useful tip. So, how do we ask for the bill or the check? You need to get the waiter's attention. You can do this by making eye contact and giving a small smile or a small nod. And when they come to your table, what do you say? You can pay with cash or with a credit card. And after you pay, it is time to leave. It is always nice to say a final thank you. Yes, as you are leaving, you can say to your waiter or the host, "Thank you. That was lovely." Or, "Thank you. Everything was delicious." And then a simple goodbye or "have a good evening." And that's it. You have successfully navigated a restaurant visit in English from start to finish. From asking for a table to ordering to paying the bill, it all feels so much clearer now. It is a series of small, simple steps, and each step has a simple, polite phrase. This has been incredibly useful. I think we are ready to do our recap, and then we can get ready to change levels. I agree. Let's summarize the main event of ordering and paying. What was our main goal in this final part of our Essentials Guide? Our main goal was to learn the most important and polite phrases for ordering a meal and for paying the bill at the end. And what was the golden phrase we learned for ordering both drinks and food? The golden phrase was, "I would like," or the short form, "I'd like." For example, "I'd like the fish, please." We also said that "can I have" is another excellent choice. Perfect. And what was the simple phrase for asking to pay at the end of the meal? The simple phrase was "the bill, please." Or the longer question, "can we have the bill, please?" Fantastic. With these essential phrases, our listeners now have the complete survival guide for any restaurant or cafe. You can feel confident and prepared. You can. And now, for all of you listeners who are ready for the next challenge, we are going to change gears. That's right. Thank you for joining me for the A2 to B1 part of our guide. Now the masterclass begins. We are going to switch to a C1 advanced level. We will revisit these same situations, but we will explore the sophisticated language, the cultural nuances, and the subtle details that proficient speakers use. The language will be faster and more complex. It is the perfect next step for those of you who want to move from just communicating to truly mastering the art of conversation. Are you ready for the challenge? Let's begin. All right. Now that we've laid the groundwork with the bare essentials, let's dive into the deep end. The actual experience of dining out for a proficient speaker. is a world away from simply asking for a table and a plate of food. Precisely, it's a performance, a social ritual with layers of unspoken rules and linguistic subtleties. Let's rewind to the very beginning, but this time with a C1 lens. We're not just arriving, we're making an entrance, and our language needs to reflect that intentionality. Let's start before we even set foot in the restaurant. I'm talking about the art of making a reservation. A basic learner might say, I want to book a table. How does a C1 speaker elevate this? The language becomes more specific and demonstrates foresight. You wouldn't just book a table, you'd make a specific inquiry. For example, I was hoping to book a table for two for this Friday evening, perhaps around 8 o'clock. Let's deconstruct that. I was hoping to is a wonderfully soft and polite opener. It's much less direct than I want, and perhaps around 8 o'clock shows flexibility. It invites a dialogue with the restaurant. Exactly. It signals that you understand they are busy and you're willing to negotiate. But the real sophistication comes in the next part, making a specific request for the type of table. This is where you start to shape your future experience. You're not just a passive recipient of whatever table they give you. Correct. So you might add, if at all possible, we'd love a table with a view, or for a more romantic or private setting. We were hoping for something a little more intimate, perhaps a quiet nook or a booth if you have one available. The vocabulary there is key. A quiet nook is a beautiful, almost literary way to describe a small, cozy corner. A booth refers to that specific type of seating with long cushioned benches. Using this specific terminology shows you are a discerning and experienced diner. And what if the reason for the dinner is special? Then you must signal that to the restaurant. You would say, I should mention it's a special occasion. We're celebrating an anniversary. This isn't just a piece of information, it's a strategic move. How so? What does that statement implicitly ask for? It implicitly suggests that you would appreciate a better table, perhaps a little more attentive service, and it opens the door for the restaurant to offer a small gesture like a complimentary glass of champagne or a special dessert. You haven't asked for anything directly, but you have planted the seed. It is a masterful piece of indirect communication. So, we've made our sophisticated reservation. Now, let's return to the moment of arrival, which we touched on at the basic level. At the A2 level, we say, a table for two, please. At the C1 level, we often refer back to our booking. Good evening. We have a reservation for two at 8 o'clock under the name Vance. It's more precise and professional. It immediately establishes you as an organized and serious customer. Now let's revisit that crucial negotiation for a better table. We talked about not liking a table in the thoroughfare. What are some other sophisticated ways to articulate a preference? You might want a table that offers a bit of privacy. You could say, this is lovely, but I think we'd prefer a table that's a little less conspicuous. Conspicuous, an excellent word, meaning easily seen or attracting attention. So, less conspicuous means more private. Exactly. Or you might be concerned about the acoustics. In a very loud modern restaurant with high ceilings, you could say, the ambiance is fantastic, but would you happen to have a table where the acoustics are a little softer? It might be easier for us to converse. Again, The strategy is impeccable. You begin with a compliment about the ambiance. Then you frame your request not as a complaint, but as a practical need, the need to converse. You are a reasonable person making a reasonable request. It's all about framing. What if the table is too close to another table? This is a common problem in busy city restaurants. A blunt person would say, "We're too close to them." A proficient speaker would use understatement and indirectness. "I wonder if there's a table with a little more separation." "We'd hate to impose on our neighbor's conversation." That is wonderfully Machiavellian. You've framed your desire for privacy as a polite concern for the other diners. It's almost impossible for the host to refuse such a considerate guest. It is a social chess game, and language is your most powerful piece. Every word is chosen for its effect. This really highlights the difference between functional communication and masterful interaction. The C1 speaker is constantly aware of the social dynamics and uses language to navigate them gracefully. And this attention to detail continues once you are seated. The way you physically occupy the space, the way you handle the menu, the initial interaction with the waiter. These are all part of the performance. Let's talk about that first interaction with the waiter. At the basic level, they ask if you want a drink. At the C1 level, this first exchange is an opportunity to build rapport. How so? The waiter might approach and say, "Good evening. My name is Daniel, and I'll be looking after you this evening. Can I start you off with some water for the table? Still or sparkling?" A very standard but professional opening. How does a C1 speaker respond in a way that builds a connection? Instead of a simple, "Still water, please," you might engage with them personally. "Daniel, thank you very much. That would be lovely. We'll have a bottle of sparkling for the table, please." Using their name immediately changes the dynamic from a transaction to a personal interaction. It shows you were listening and that you see them as a person, not just a functionary. It's a small detail, but it has a significant impact on the quality of service you are likely to receive. It absolutely does. You are establishing a warm, respectful relationship from the very first sentence. You might also ask a brief question. "Daniel, lovely to meet you. Before we look at the wine, could you tell us if there are any specials this evening that aren't on the menu?" Another strategic inquiry. It shows you are an engaged and interested diner, and it gives the waiter a chance to share their expert knowledge, which they usually enjoy doing. So, within the first 2 minutes of being seated, you have already used sophisticated language to secure the right table, established a personal rapport with your server, and inquired about specials. You are in complete control of the experience. This is a world away from the passive, reactive communication of a lower level speaker. This is proactive and strategic. I think this is a perfect point to pause and reflect on what we've covered. I agree. Let's do our recap. What was the overarching theme? The overarching theme was for a C1 speaker, the arrival and seating process is not a simple transaction, but a sophisticated social negotiation where language is used strategically to shape the dining experience. Excellent. And what were some of the key linguistic tools we identified for making a reservation? We moved from "I want" to softer, more polite forms like "I was hoping to," and made specific nuanced requests for tables with a view, a quiet nook, or for a special occasion. And when we arrived and didn't like our assigned table, we used precise, elevated vocabulary to explain why. We avoided tables in the thoroughfare or ones that were too conspicuous. We expressed concerns about acoustics or a draft using understatement and softeners. And what was the key to our initial interaction with the waiter? The key was to build rapport. We did this by using their name, showing appreciation, and asking intelligent questions like inquiring about the specials. This changes the dynamic from a simple service transaction to a respectful personal interaction, setting the stage for a much better overall experience. Absolutely. And having set that positive stage, we now arrive at the centerpiece of the table, the menu. For an A2 learner, a menu is a list of foods. For a C1 speaker, a modern menu is a piece of literature, a marketing document that needs to be deciphered. Deciphered is the perfect verb. It suggests we are cracking a code. The language on high-end menus today is incredibly deliberate, designed to evoke certain feelings and justify a certain price point. It's a fascinating linguistic landscape. So, let's begin to analyze the gastronomic jargon and lexical nuance you might encounter. Where do we start? I think we have to start with the adjectives, the words used to describe the ingredients themselves. There's a whole family of words that have become ubiquitous in modern dining that signal quality and authenticity. You must be talking about words like artisanal, heritage, and farm to table. Precisely. Let's take artisanal, better told, artisanal bread. An A2 speaker understands what this word is trying to do. It's creating a story of a skilled craftsman and artisan probably waking up at 4 a.m. to bake this bread by hand using traditional methods. It's the opposite of a mass-produced factory-made product. Exactly. It's a word loaded with connotations of care, tradition, and superior quality. Whether the bread is actually better is almost irrelevant. The word itself has done its job of elevating the product. What about a word like heritage, as in heritage tomatoes? Heritage or heirloom are very similar. They suggest that the variety of the plant is old, traditional, and not the modern genetically modified type you might find in a supermarket. It implies a deeper, more authentic flavor. Again, it's about storytelling. These aren't just any tomatoes. They have a history, a lineage. They are special. This connects to the broader concept of provenance. Provenance, a fantastic C1 word. It simply means the origin or the source of something. Yes, you will often see it on menus. Pork with a provenance from the Lake District. This isn't just a geographical note. It is a signal of quality. It tells the diner that the restaurant cares about where its ingredients come from. It implies a relationship with the farmer, a commitment to local sourcing, and a guarantee of freshness. It's part of the farm-to-table narrative. The farm-to-table movement is a whole philosophy, isn't it? It's the idea that there is a short and transparent journey from the farm where the food was grown to the table where you're eating. It's a powerful marketing tool that speaks to a desire for food that is wholesome, sustainable, and trustworthy. So, if you see farm to table on a menu, you know the restaurant is positioning itself as ethical and high quality. Let's move from the origin of the ingredients to the way they are gathered. A very fashionable word in recent years is foraged. Foraged, as in wild mushrooms foraged from the local forest. Correct. To forage means to search for wild food. This word paints a romantic picture of the chef wandering through nature, carefully selecting the best wild ingredients. It suggests rarity, seasonality, and a deep connection to the natural world. It's the ultimate antidote to the industrial food system. It's almost a mythical story right there on the menu. So we have these words that describe the ingredients. Now, what about the words that describe how the food is prepared? This is where the jargon can become even more abstract. You must be thinking of the word deconstructed, the infamous deconstructed. What does it mean when you see a deconstructed apple crumble on a menu? It means you will not receive a traditional apple crumble. Instead, you will likely receive all the components of the dish served separately on the plate. Perhaps some cooked apple here, a sprinkle of crumble mixture there, and a scoop of ice cream on the side. The chef has taken it apart or deconstructed it, so you can experience the flavors and textures in a new way. It's a signal of a very modern, experimental, and intellectual approach to cooking. It can be wonderful or it can be slightly pretentious. But as a C1 speaker, your job is to understand the signal it is sending. This is a chef who is playing with tradition. Another key term in modern preparation is sous vide. Ah, yes, a French term. It literally means under vacuum. Can you explain the process simply? It's a method of cooking where food, often meat or fish, is sealed in a plastic bag and cooked very slowly in a temperature-controlled water bath. And what is the effect of this method? It results in an incredibly tender and evenly cooked product. When you see sous vide on a menu, it signals a commitment to technical precision and a modern cooking style. It tells you the kitchen is very professional. These terms are signposts. They tell you about the philosophy of the restaurant. Now, let's talk about the verbs used on a menu. They are also chosen with extreme care. They are. You rarely see simple verbs like cooked or fried. Instead, you will see a whole range of more specific and evocative verbs. For example, meat isn't just cooked. It might be pan-seared. Pan-seared. This creates a specific image of the meat being cooked quickly at a high temperature in a pan to create a delicious brown crust on the outside while keeping the inside juicy. Or vegetables might be blanched. Blanched means they have been put in boiling water for a very short time and then into cold water. This keeps them crisp and brightly colored. It suggests a very fresh and light style of cooking. You might also see fish described as cured, as in cured salmon. This means the fish has not been cooked with heat, but with salt and sugar, which preserves it and gives it a unique, delicate texture. Each of these verbs, pan-seared, blanched, cured, provides a huge amount of information about the dish. It communicates the texture, the flavor, and the culinary skill involved. It allows you to build a very accurate picture of the dish in your mind before you even order it. Understanding this lexicon is key to navigating a modern menu. It allows you to make informed choices and to understand the story the chef is trying to tell. It really is a form of literary analysis. You are reading between the lines to understand the subtext. Okay, this has been a fascinating deep dive into the language of the menu. I think a recap is in order. I agree. Let's crystallize these ideas. What was the central premise of our discussion? The central premise was that a modern menu is not just a list of food, but a carefully crafted marketing document. A C1 speaker needs to be able to decipher the jargon and understand the cultural signals it sends. And we started with adjectives that tell a story about the ingredients. Can you remember some of them? We talked about words like artisanal, heritage, and farm to table, which all signal authenticity, tradition, and high quality. We also mentioned foraged, which suggests a deep connection to nature. Excellent. And what about the vocabulary used to describe modern cooking techniques? We dissected terms like deconstructed, which signals an experimental and intellectual approach to cooking, and sous vide, which signals technical precision and modernity. And finally, we touched on the importance of specific evocative verbs. Yes, verbs like pan-seared, blanched, and cured. Each one provides a wealth of information about the preparation, texture, and flavor of the dish, allowing the diner to make a much more informed decision. By understanding this lexicon, a proficient speaker can engage with the menu on a much deeper level. Precisely. And having engaged with the menu, having deciphered the clues, and built a mental picture of the dishes, we arrive at the next critical interaction, the act of ordering itself. At a basic level, this is a simple transaction. I'd like the chicken. But at the C1 level, it becomes a nuanced dialogue, an opportunity for strategic inquiry and subtle modification. Let's call it the art of the advanced order. The goal is not merely to state your choice, but to ensure that what arrives at your table is exactly what you want, and to do so with effortless grace. So, where does this advanced ordering process begin? It often begins not with the statement, but with a question. A less proficient speaker might be hesitant to ask for more information, perhaps for fear of appearing difficult or ignorant, whereas a proficient speaker understands that intelligent questions are a sign of an engaged and appreciative diner. They demonstrate that you are taking the food seriously. Exactly. So, let's say a dish on the menu has captured your interest, but the description is a little vague. Perhaps it just says, market fish of the day with seasonal vegetables. An A2 learner might just order it and hope for the best. What does the C1 speaker do? The C1 speaker initiates a polite interrogation. They might say to the waiter, I was intrigued by the market fish. Could you tell me a little more about it? Let's analyze that phrase. I was intrigued by is a wonderful opener. It's a compliment to the menu. And could you tell me a little more about it is a soft, open-ended question. It invites the waiter to be the expert. A good waiter will relish this opportunity. They might respond, of course. Today, the market fish is a beautiful sea bass, which the chef pan-sears to get a lovely crispy skin, and it's served on a bed of samphire with a lemon butter sauce. And with that one simple question, you have transformed a vague menu item into a vivid and appealing dish. You can now make a much more informed decision. You are co-creating your meal. You might follow up with another strategic inquiry. For example, that sounds exquisite. Is the sauce very rich? Another excellent question. You're drilling down into the specifics. You're not just asking, is it good? You are asking a specific question about a characteristic of the dish, its richness. This shows a sophisticated palate. It does. This kind of dialogue is a key feature of high-end dining. Now, let's move from inquiry to modification. This is a very delicate area. The art of asking for a special request. This is where social and linguistic skills are truly tested. Nobody wants to be perceived as a difficult customer, the cardinal sin of dining out. So, how do we make a request without sounding demanding? The key, once again, is indirectness and providing a rationale. Let's take a common scenario. A dish you like comes with French fries, but you would prefer a healthier option like a salad. The blunt approach is, I want salad, not fries. It's abrupt and sounds like a demand. What is the C1 alternative? The C1 speaker would soften the language and frame it as a question of possibility. I was wondering, would it be an imposition to substitute the fries for a side salad? Would it be an imposition? That is a master class in politeness. An imposition is an unfair or unreasonable demand. By phrasing it this way, you are acknowledging that you are asking for something extra and showing respect for the kitchen's workload. You are essentially saying, I know this might be difficult, and if it is, I understand. This makes it almost impossible for them to say no. Another excellent phrase is, would it be terribly difficult to have the sauce on the side? The adverb terribly is a classic British English softener. It adds a layer of dramatic politeness. It does. Now, what if your request is related to a dietary requirement like an allergy or an intolerance? This is a situation where you need to be clear and direct, but you can still be polite. How would you phrase that? You would say, I should mention that I have a serious nut allergy. Could you please advise me on which dishes are completely nut-free? The phrasing there is very professional. I should mention that is a formal way to introduce important information, and could you please advise me positions the waiter as an expert guide? What if you have a preference rather than an allergy? For instance, you don't enjoy very spicy food. You would articulate this as a question about your own suitability for the dish. For example, the Thai green curry sounds wonderful, but I'm not very good with a lot of heat. Do you think it would be too spicy for me? Another brilliant strategy. You are not criticizing the dish. You are asking for advice based on your personal tolerance. It transforms a potential complaint into a collaborative decision. The waiter can then honestly advise you, perhaps by saying, it does have a bit of a kick, sir. Perhaps the chef could make it a little milder for you. And there you have achieved your goal without ever making a direct demand. This is the essence of sophisticated communication. It is the ability to achieve your desired outcome while making the other person feel respected, valued, and in control. And this skill is not just for making requests. It's also for when you are ordering for a group and need to manage the pacing of the meal. An excellent point. In some restaurants, especially in the US, the service can be very fast. The main courses might arrive before you have even finished your starters. A proficient host for the evening would preempt this. They might say to the waiter when ordering, we're in no rush this evening, so please do feel free to pace the courses out for us. Pace the courses out. A clear and professional instruction, but phrased as a polite suggestion. Please do feel free to is a very elegant and non-demanding way to give a command. It establishes you as a thoughtful host who is in control of the rhythm of the evening. You are designing the experience, not just consuming it. This has been a very detailed look at the linguistics of ordering. I think a recap is essential. Absolutely. Let's consolidate these advanced strategies. What was the fundamental shift in mindset for the advanced order? The fundamental shift was from making a simple statement to engaging in a sophisticated dialogue. The goal is to use language to inquire, to modify, and to shape the experience with grace. And what was our key strategy for learning more about a dish? Our strategy was polite interrogation. We used soft, open-ended questions like, I was intrigued by could you tell me a little more about it? To invite the waiter to be the expert and give us more information. Perfect. And when it came to making special requests or modifications, the key was indirectness and politeness. We used masterful phrases like, would it be an imposition to substitute? Or, would it be terribly difficult to make our request sound as reasonable and non-demanding as possible? We also learned to frame our preferences as a collaborative inquiry, asking, do you think this would be too spicy for me? Rather than criticizing the dish. And finally, we saw how to take control of the timing of the meal with polite instructions like, please do feel free to pace the courses out for us. All of these techniques demonstrate a C1 level command of both language and social dynamics, transforming a simple order into a masterful performance. A masterful performance indeed. And now the food begins to arrive. The conversation flows, the meal progresses, and you reach a point where you want to comment on the quality of the dish. This is another moment where the gap between a proficient speaker and a truly fluent one becomes apparent. Yes, this is the vocabulary of appreciation. At a lower level, the entire spectrum of positive culinary experience is often condensed into one word: delicious. And while delicious is a perfectly good word, a C1 speaker has a much richer and more specific palette of terms to draw from. They can praise food like a connoisseur person with expert knowledge and discerning taste. That's precisely the persona that this advanced vocabulary helps to project. So, let's move beyond delicious and explore this sophisticated lexicon. How can we break it down? Perhaps by looking at different aspects of the food. An excellent approach. Let's start with the overall top-level impression. If a dish is not just good, but truly exceptional, what are some of the powerful adjectives we can use? A classic and very elegant choice is exquisite. Exquisite. It suggests not just a wonderful taste, but also a sense of refinement, beauty, and delicate craftsmanship. You would use it for a very well-presented and complex dish. Exactly. You might say to your companion, the presentation of this dish is exquisite. Or to the waiter, my compliments to the chef. The sea base was absolutely exquisite. Another wonderful word for this top tier of quality is sublime. Sublime. This word takes it to an almost spiritual level. It means something is of such excellence or beauty that it inspires a sense of awe. It's a very powerful word to be used sparingly and only for something truly outstanding. That chocolate dessert wasn't just good, it was sublime. I've never tasted anything like it. A third and perhaps slightly more theatrical option is to call a dish a triumph. A triumph. I love that. It frames the dish as a great victory or achievement for the chef. It does. It's a very emphatic and generous compliment. The combination of the sweet and sour flavors in this dish is an absolute triumph. It's a very memorable and sophisticated way to give praise. So for the overall impression, we have exquisite, sublime, and a triumph. Now let's drill down into the specifics. A huge part of the experience of food is its flavor profile. How can we describe taste with more precision? Let's start with a sharp, tangy, or zesty flavor like that of citrus fruits. Instead of just lemony, you could use the word piquant. Piquant. It often describes a flavor that is pleasantly sharp and stimulating. You might say, the sauce has a lovely piquant quality that really cuts through the richness of the meat. A perfect example. It shows you are analyzing how the different flavors on the plate are working together. Another word in this family is zesty. Zesty. This specifically relates to the fragrant outer peel of citrus fruits. The zest. It suggests a fresh, bright, and energetic flavor. The dessert has a wonderfully zesty lime curd. It's more precise and evocative than just saying it tastes of lime. Now, what about deep, strong, and complex flavors like in a slow-cooked meat dish or a strong coffee? For that, an excellent adjective is robust. Robust. It means strong and full-bodied. This is a very robust red wine full of dark fruit flavors. Or the beef stew has a deep, robust flavor that can only come from hours of slow cooking. It suggests richness and complexity. What about the opposite? A flavor that is not strong, but very delicate and understated. For that, the perfect word is subtle. Subtle, meaning not obvious and cleverly understated. Yes, you might need to pay close attention to notice it. There's a very subtle hint of truffle oil in this risotto, and it's absolutely divine. Praising a subtle flavor shows that you have a very refined palate. It does. It's a very high-level compliment. So we have flavor profiles covered. What about the texture or the mouthfeel of the food? This is another area rich with vocabulary. It is. Let's talk about a smooth, rich, and creamy texture. A wonderful word for this is velvety. Velvety, like the fabric velvet. The texture of this chocolate mousse is incredible. It's so light and velvety. Another word which is particularly good for rich sauces or soups is unctuous. Unctuous. That's a fantastic C1 word. It describes a rich, oily, or greasy texture, but in a very positive and luxurious way. The bone marrow sauce was incredibly rich and unctuous. It coated the pasta perfectly. It suggests a very indulgent and satisfying experience. Now let's consider the opposite texture, something that is light and full of air. For that, you might use the word ethereal. Ethereal, like something from another world. Extremely light and delicate. It's a very poetic compliment. The foam on top of the dish was almost ethereal. It just melted in the mouth. This is the language of a food critic, not just a casual diner. It demonstrates an incredibly high level of linguistic command, and it makes the act of eating and describing a very intellectual and enjoyable process. We've covered a vast amount of vocabulary for positive experiences. But what about the other side of the coin? How do we handle a situation when the food is not good? The eloquence of a polite complaint. This is perhaps one of the most challenging social and linguistic tests a speaker can face. Indeed, our goal is to express dissatisfaction, get the problem resolved, but do so without creating an awkward or confrontational atmosphere. So the first rule is to never be aggressive or accusatory. You must always start with a polite opener that softens the complaint. A classic example is, "I'm so sorry to be a bother," but that phrase immediately signals that you are a polite person who does not enjoy complaining. It puts the waiter at ease. Another great one is, Excuse me, I hate to have to mention this, but again, you are expressing reluctance, which makes your complaint seem more reasonable. So, you've used your polite opener. Now, you need to state the problem. The key here is to use subjective and tentative language. What do I mean by that? Instead of stating the problem as an objective fact, you state it as your personal experience or opinion. For example, don't say, "This steak is tough." That sounds like an accusation. It does. Instead, you would say, "I'm finding my steak to be a little on the tough side." "I'm finding it to be," and "a little on the tough side." The language is so much softer and less confrontational. It's your personal experience, not a universal fact. Let's try another one. "The soup is cold." The direct, impolite way is, "This soup is cold." The C1 way, "I'm afraid my soup seems to have gone a bit cold." "I'm afraid" is another excellent softener. And "seems to have gone" is a very indirect way of stating the problem. You are not even saying it is cold, but that it seems to be. It allows for the possibility, however small, that you are mistaken. Another excellent strategy is to frame the problem as a mismatch with your expectations. "This isn't quite what I was expecting." This is a very clever phrase because it doesn't place blame on anyone. It's not saying the dish is bad, just that it's different from what you imagine. It then invites the waiter to ask a follow-up question. "Oh, I'm sorry to hear that. What were you expecting?" And this opens a dialogue to resolve the issue. A similar phrase is, "I think there may have been a slight misunderstanding." This is perfect if they have brought you the wrong dish completely. Yes, a slight misunderstanding is a wonderfully diplomatic way to say you made a mistake. It completely removes the accusation and allows the waiter to correct the error without feeling defensive. The mastery of this language is incredible. It allows you to navigate a potentially very negative situation and turn it into a positive, collaborative problem-solving exercise. And that is the ultimate goal of a proficient speaker. Okay, I think we have thoroughly covered both praise and problems. A recap is definitely needed. Let's do it. Our main goal was to move beyond delicious and learn the sophisticated vocabulary of a connoisseur, as well as the delicate language of a polite complaint. When a dish was truly exceptional, what were our top-level adjectives? We had exquisite for refinement and beauty, sublime for a taste that inspires awe, and a triumph to praise the chef's achievement. And we learned to describe flavor profiles with more precision. Yes, using words like piquant or zesty for sharp flavors, robust for deep, complex flavors, and subtle for delicate ones. We also explored textures with words like velvety, unctuous, and ethereal. Then we switched to the challenging topic of making a complaint. What was the most important principle? The most important principle was to be polite, indirect, and non-accusatory. We start with softeners like, "I'm so sorry to be a bother," and then state the problem using subjective language like, "I'm finding my steak to be a little on the tough side." And we learn to frame the issue as a misunderstanding or a mismatch of expectations. Mastering this vocabulary allows a C1 speaker to handle any culinary situation with absolute grace and control. Absolute grace and control. I think that perfectly encapsulates our goal. Now, there is one area of the dining experience that often has its own unique and sometimes intimidating set of linguistic rules and rituals. You must be referring to the wine list. It can feel like being handed a document in a foreign language, even for native English speakers. It certainly can. So, let's explore how to navigate the wine list and interact with a sommelier with the same level of sophistication and confidence we've applied to the food. An essential skill for anyone who enjoys wine and wants to participate fully in the dining experience. A sommelier, of course, being the French term for a wine expert or wine steward in a restaurant. And interacting with a sommelier is a specific type of social performance. The goal is to get a wine you will enjoy at a price you are comfortable with, all while appearing knowledgeable but not arrogant. A delicate balancing act, indeed. Let's begin with the moment the wine list is presented to you. It might be a very long and detailed document. What is the first thing a proficient speaker does? The first thing is not to panic. You take your time. You don't have to pretend you know every wine on the list. In fact, admitting the limits of your knowledge can be a very sophisticated move. How so? Because it opens the door to asking for help in an intelligent way. But before you ask for help, you should first try to identify what you want. You need to be able to express your general preferences. Let's talk about that vocabulary. How do we express preferences for red wine, for example? You would rarely just say, I like red wine. Instead, you would talk about its body. You might say, I'm in the mood for something full-bodied and robust. Full-bodied and robust. These words suggest a wine that is powerful, rich, and high in alcohol and tannin. You might be thinking of a Cabernet Sauvignon or a Malbec. Exactly. On the other hand, you might prefer a lighter style. In that case, you would say, I'm looking for a red that's a little lighter on the palate. Perhaps something with soft tannins, lighter on the palate and soft tannins. This language signals a preference for a more delicate red wine like a Pinot Noir. Using terms like body, palate, and tannins immediately shows the sommelier that you have a certain level of wine knowledge. It gives them a framework to help you. The same applies to white wine. You wouldn't just say, I want a dry white wine. What would you say instead? You might describe the flavor profile you're looking for. I'd love something crisp and zesty with good minerality. Crisp, zesty, minerality. These are classic tasting notes. Crisp and zesty suggest high acidity and citrus flavors like a Sauvignon Blanc. Minerality is a more abstract term, suggesting a stony or flinty taste. Alternatively, you might want a richer, creamier white wine. You could say, I'm looking for a white with a bit more complexity and a buttery texture. Complexity and buttery texture. This points towards a white wine that has likely been aged in oak, such as a classic Chardonnay. So, the first step is to arm yourself with this basic vocabulary of preference. Now, let's say you've looked at the list. You have a general idea of what you want, but you're not sure which specific bottle to choose. It is time to summon the sommelier. And how do you engage them? You engage them as a fellow enthusiast. You might say, we were looking at the Burgundy section, which is fantastic, by the way. We're torn between a couple of options. What are your thoughts on the Jean? Let's break that down. You start with a compliment. You show that you have already done some work. You are not asking them to do everything for you, and then you ask for their thoughts, not just their recommendation. It invites a discussion, a sharing of opinions, rather than a simple transaction. What if you are less sure of yourself and you genuinely need a recommendation to go with your food? This is a very common scenario. The key is to give the sommelier clear parameters to work with. The two most important parameters are your taste preference and your price point. So you would combine the vocabulary we just discussed with a clear instruction about the food. Exactly. You could say, "We're both having the duck for our main course. We were hoping for a red wine to complement it. We generally enjoy wines that are earthy and not too fruit forward. To complement the duck, that's the key phrase. You are asking for a pairing. An earthy and not too fruit forward gives them a clear direction on taste. But we have forgotten the most awkward part for many people, the price. Ah, yes. How do you indicate your budget without explicitly saying, I only want to spend $50? There is a wonderfully subtle and universally understood technique for this. When the sommelier is standing next to you, you simply point to a wine on the list that is in your price range and you say a question about it. For example, you point to a $50 bottle and you say, could you tell me a little about this one? Precisely. You have not mentioned the price at all, but you have non-verbally communicated your budget to the sommelier. And a good sommelier will understand this signal perfectly. They will then recommend other wines around that same price point. It is an elegant and discreet way to handle a potentially awkward part of the conversation. So you have had this sophisticated discussion and a bottle has been chosen. Now comes the next part of the ritual, the presentation and tasting. Yes, the sommelier will present the bottle to you showing you the label. Your job is simply to nod and confirm that it is the correct wine. They will then open it and pour a small amount into your glass. This is not for you to decide if you like the wine. What is the purpose of this small taste? The sole purpose of this tasting ritual is to check if the wine is corked or has any other obvious faults. Corked means the wine has been contaminated by a faulty cork, giving it an unpleasant, musty smell, like a damp basement or a wet dog. It is quite a rare problem these days, but the ritual persists. So, your job is to give the wine a swirl in the glass to release its aromas, take a sniff, and then a small sip. And assuming it is not faulty, what is the simple appropriate response? A simple nod and a phrase like, "That's lovely," "Thank you" or "Perfect," "Thank you very much." That is all that is required. You are not expected to give a long, detailed tasting note at this stage. You are simply giving your approval for them to pour the wine for your guests. This whole process from discussing the list to the final nod of approval is a beautiful example of a conversation that is full of subtext and unspoken rules. It is a language within a language. Mastering it is a clear sign that you have reached a very high level of both linguistic and cultural fluency, and it makes the entire dining experience so much richer and more enjoyable. You are an active participant, not just a passive consumer. This has been a very thorough exploration of a complex topic. I think a recap is in order. I agree. Let's consolidate our guide to navigating the wine list. What was the first step we identified for a C1 speaker? The first step was to be able to express your own preferences using sophisticated terminology. We talked about describing a wine's body, palate, and tannins, and using flavor descriptors like crisp, zesty, robust, or earthy. Excellent. And when we need to ask for recommendation, the key was to provide the sommelier with clear parameters, your taste preferences, and the food you will be pairing the wine with. We also learned the subtle technique of pointing to a wine on the list to discreetly indicate our price point, a very important skill. And finally, what did we say about the tasting ritual? We clarified that the purpose of the tasting is not to decide if you like the wine, but to check for any faults, such as the wine being corked. If the wine is fine, a simple positive confirmation like, "That's perfect, thank you," is all that's needed. By mastering these linguistic and social cues, a proficient speaker can transform a potentially intimidating interaction into an enjoyable and collaborative exploration of wine. A collaborative exploration, I think that's the perfect description for the entire C1 level dining experience we've been dissecting. It's a series of sophisticated collaborations. But now, we approach the final act of this social performance. The meal has been exquisite, the wine sublime, the conversation has been scintillating. What is the last hurdle we must clear? We must, of course, settle the bill. And just like every other stage of our journey, this final interaction is laden with its own linguistic rituals, cultural nuances, and potential for social awkwardness. It can be the most awkward part of the evening if not handled with grace. So, let's analyze the language and social dynamics of settling the bill and making a graceful exit. Let's begin with the signal that the meal is over. At a lower level, we learn to say, "The bill, please." While this is perfectly functional, there are more subtle nonverbal ways to indicate you are ready to pay. Yes, a skilled waiter is trained to look for these cues. For example, when you have both finished your coffee or dessert and you place your napkin on the table, that is often a signal. Or if you make a point of catching the waiter's eye and giving a slight nod, this is often all that is needed. It avoids having to interrupt the flow of conversation at the table by shouting across the room. But if you do need to ask verbally, are there more sophisticated alternatives to "the bill, please"? There are. You could say in a quiet tone to the waiter, "Whenever you have a moment, we're ready to settle up." Settle up, a very natural and common phrasal verb for paying what you owe. Whenever you have a moment is also wonderfully polite. It acknowledges that the waiter is busy and shows you are not in a desperate rush. Another very elegant option is to say, "Could we have the bill when you're ready?" Again, the power is placed in the hands of the server. It is deferential and polite. So, the bill arrives at the table, usually in a small folder or on a small plate. And now begins what I like to call the payment dance. The payment dance, an excellent term for that often rehearsed choreography of politeness and generosity. This is highly dependent on culture and context. Let's focus on a common scenario in British or American culture where two friends or colleagues are dining. The bill arrives and both feel they should offer to pay. Yes, person A will reach for the bill and say the classic line, "Let me get this," or "This one's on me." And person B is socially obligated to make a protest. Even if they secretly want person A to pay, they must say, "Oh no, you don't have to do that." Or, "Are you sure? We can split it." This is the first step of the dance. Person A must then insist. They will say, "No, I insist. It was my pleasure." The phrase, "I insist," is the key move. It signals that the offer is genuine and firm. At this point, person B has a choice. They can gracefully accept, in which case they must say, "Well, thank you so much. That's incredibly kind of you. You must let me get the next one. You must let me get the next one." This is a crucial line. It rebalances the social debt. It promises reciprocity in the future and turns the single event into part of an ongoing relationship. Alternatively, if person B also genuinely wants to pay, they might escalate the dance. They could say, "You paid last time. I really must insist." The polite battle of insisting can continue for a short while before one person gives in. It's a fascinating ritual. What about when you genuinely want to share the cost? Then you need the language of splitting. The most common phrase is, "Shall we split it?" Or more informally, "Shall we go Dutch?" Go Dutch, an interesting idiom. It means that each person pays for their own share. Yes, if you are splitting it exactly in half, you can say to the waiter, "Could we split this evenly between two cards?" But what if one person had a lot more to eat or drink than the other? Ah, a more complicated situation. Then splitting it evenly would be unfair. In that case, the more considerate approach is to say, "Let's not split it evenly. I had the steak and 2 glasses of wine, so I should definitely pay a larger share." This shows a high level of social awareness and fairness. It preempts any potential resentment. It does. So the payment dance is navigated. The card is processed. Now we come to the final and often most confusing part for learners, the tip. The tip or gratuity, the extra money you leave for the service. This is one of the most culturally specific areas of dining. Let's talk about the language you might see on the bill itself. You might see a line that says, "Service charge included." What does that mean precisely? It means the restaurant has already added a tip to your bill, usually around 12.5% in the UK, for example. In this case, you are not obligated to pay any more, but you might also see the phrase, "Service is not included." This is a clear signal that a tip is expected. It is up to you to calculate it and add it to the total. And the most confusing phrase of all, a discretionary service charge of 12.5% has been added. Discretionary, this is the key word. It means it is optional. You have the choice to pay it or not. If the service was good, you pay it. If the service was terrible, you have the right to ask them to remove it, and that would be another delicate social negotiation. One would have to use all the polite complaint language we learned earlier. So, understanding the precise meaning of included, not included, and discretionary is absolutely crucial to navigating this final transaction correctly. This is all part of the unwritten menu, the cultural knowledge that a C1 speaker possesses. It is, the meal is paid for, the tip is handled, we are now ready to leave. How do we make a graceful exit? You don't just disappear. As you leave, you should make eye contact with your waiter or the host, smile, and offer a final positive comment. Something like, "Thank you so much. That was a wonderful evening. Everything was absolutely superb. Thank you." This final compliment leaves everyone with a positive feeling and completes the social performance on a high note. It reinforces the rapport you built at the beginning and ensures you will be welcomed back warmly in the future. And with that, We have completed our journey from the nuanced request for a quiet nook to the final eloquent thank you. It really demonstrates that a restaurant visit for a proficient speaker is a complex and rewarding experience, a rich tapestry of language, culture, and social strategy. I believe a final synthesis is in order. Let's bring it all together. What is the overarching theme that has run through our entire discussion today? The central idea is that for a C1 speaker, a conversation in a restaurant or cafe is not a simple transaction. It is a sophisticated social performance, and language is the primary tool for shaping and elevating that performance. We began by deconstructing the arrival using nuanced language to negotiate for the ideal table. We then became literary critics, deciphering the gastronomic jargon of the modern menu, understanding the stories behind words like artisanal, foraged, and deconstructed. Our journey continued with the art of the advanced order, where we used polite interrogation and subtle framing to make special requests, ensuring our meal was perfect without ever sounding demanding. We armed ourselves with the vocabulary of a connoisseur, learning to praise exceptional food with words like exquisite, sublime, and a triumph, and to describe flavors and textures with precision. We also mastered the delicate art of the polite complaint, using subjective and indirect language to resolve issues with grace. We demystified the intimidating world of the wine list, learning to express preferences and interact with a sommelier with confidence and sophistication. And finally, we navigated the social rituals of the payment dance, dissecting the language of tipping and making a graceful, memorable exit. The message is clear. At this level, English is not just a tool for communication, it is a tool for creating experiences, for navigating complex social landscapes, and for expressing a sophisticated and discerning personality. And with that, we hope we have given you the tools to not just dine out, but to do so with the full command and artistry of a proficient speaker. Thank you for joining me in this deep dive. I hope this discussion has been as stimulating for you as it has been for me. If you've enjoyed this exploration, do let me know in the comments below. I'd be fascinated to hear which piece of nuance or vocabulary you found most enlightening. And please do subscribe to Sonic Sage English and enable notifications. It ensures you won't miss our next adventure into the hidden depths of the English language. Until then, take care and happy dining. But wait, before we truly wrap up this episode, let's linger a little longer at the table. Because, as we've discovered, the true magic of mastering restaurant English isn't just in the phrases you use or the cultural cues you catch. It's in the stories those moments create, the connections they forge, and the quiet confidence they instill. Imagine this. You're not just walking into a restaurant anymore. You're stepping onto a stage where every word is a spotlight, every gesture a scene change. We've equipped you with the script, the props, and the director's notes. But now it's time to improvise, to make it your own. Let me paint a vivid picture to tie all these threads together, one that brings our essentials and advanced levels full circle in a way that feels alive, electric, and utterly transformative. Picture yourself in the heart of a bustling London bistro on a crisp autumn evening. The air hums with the clink of glasses and the low murmur of laughter, a symphony of sophistication that once might have left you frozen at the door. But not tonight. You've prepared. As you push open the heavy oak door, that familiar knot of nerves doesn't twist in your stomach. It's replaced by a spark of anticipation. You scan the room, spot the hostess at her podium, her smile a beacon in the warm amber glow of pendant lights. You approach with purpose, your posture relaxed yet assured. A genuine smile breaks across your face. Remember that universal key we unlocked at the very start? It disarms her instantly, setting the tone before a single word is spoken. "Good evening," you say, your voice steady and warm, channeling the C1 polish we've honed. "We have a reservation for 2 at 7:30 under the name Reyes. I was hoping, if possible, for something a touch more intimate, perhaps a quiet nook away from the draft." There it is, the soft opener, the specific request, laced with that indirect grace. She checks her tablet, her eyes lighting up with recognition. "Of course, Mr. Reyes. We've held a lovely booth for you by the window. This way, please." As you follow, you can't help but feel the shift. You're not just a guest, you're a curator of your own evening, already shaping the narrative. Seated in that plush booth, the leather sighing softly under you, the menu arrives like an old friend rather than a cryptic tome. Gone are the days of staring blankly at pan-seared heritage scallops with foraged greens and sous vide emulsion. Now, you decipher it effortlessly. The heritage whispers of sun-ripened vines in forgotten orchards. The foraged evokes misty forest floors teeming with wild secrets, and the sous vide promises precision, a velvet tenderness that dances on the edge of alchemy. You lean in, intrigued, and when the waiter, let's call him Elias, approaches with his practiced charm, you don't hesitate. "Elias, a pleasure?" You reply to his introduction, using his name like a bridge. "Before we dive in, the market fish caught my eye. I was intrigued. Could you tell me a bit more? Is the sauce particularly rich, or does it lean zesty to cut through?" He beams, clearly delighted by the engagement. "Ah, excellent choice. Tonight it's a wild sea bream, pan-seared for that crisp edge, nestled with seasonal samphire and a lemon verbena beurre blanc bright and zesty, with just a whisper of minerality from the coastal catch." Your mind races ahead, co-creating. The zesty lift will balance the bream's subtle salinity, while the samphire adds an ethereal crunch. "That sounds sublime," you muse aloud, the word slipping out like a connoisseur's sigh. "I'll start with that, and for my companion, the deconstructed beetroot tartaretto. If it wouldn't be an imposition, could we have the dressing on the side? I'm savoring every layer tonight." Elias nods, unfazed. Your phrasing, that masterful "if it wouldn't be an imposition," has turned a request into a shared conspiracy. As the courses unfold, the wine list beckons. No intimidation here. You've got the lexicon locked in. You peruse the pages, then summon the sommelier with a fellow enthusiast's ease. The Rhone selection is tempting, robust, and earthy, but not overpowering. We're pairing with the bream and a lamb rack later. Something full-bodied with soft tannins, perhaps. Around this range, you say, your fingers subtly grazing a mid-tier burgundy, the nonverbal cue sealing your budget with elegance. She recommends a côte rôtie, pours the tasting sample, and after a swirl, sniff, and sip confirming no musty cork taint, you offer a simple, perfect thank you. The bottle flows, crimson and robust, its dark berry notes weaving seamlessly into the meal. Now, the feast truly begins. The sea bream arrives, a masterpiece of presentation, golden crusted, glistening under herb-flecked oil, the samphire popping like emeralds against porcelain. You take a bite, and oh, the textures collide in velvety harmony, the piquant sauce slicing through with unctuous precision. This is a triumph, you declare to your companion, your voice alive with awe. The chef's played with tradition here, hasn't they? That subtle minerality elevates it to sublime. Conversation blooms stories of travels, debates on flavor philosophies fueled by the wine's buttery complexity. When the lamb follows, robust and rosemary infused, you praise its ethereal lightness, the way it melts without surrender. But let's not gloss over the imperfections. Life, like dining, serves curveballs. Midway through desserta, foraged berry pavlova that arrives slightly wilted, you catch it, that off note. No panic. Channeling our polite complaint toolkit, you lean toward Elias with a soft smile. I'm so sorry to bother you, but I'm afraid this seems a touch warmer than expected. Perhaps it's lingered a moment too long. It isn't quite the crisp contrast I was envisioning with the berries. Subjective, tentative, framed as a gentle mismatch. He apologizes profusely, whisks it away, and returns with a chilled replacement, comped on the house. My deepest apologies. I'll ensure the kitchen hears your thoughts. Crisis averted, rapport deepened. You've turned a snag into a story worth retelling. As the evening wanes, the signals align. Napkins folded, coffee cups emptied. You catch Elias's eye with a nod, murmuring, "Whenever you have a moment, we're ready to settle up." The bill arrives and the payment dance commences. Your companion insists. You counter with, "No, I insist. It was my pleasure," sealing it with that reciprocal promise. Next one's on you. Tipping? Service charge discretionary at 12.5% flawless evening, so you let it stand, adding a personal note of gratitude on the receipt. Rising to leave, you pause at the host's podium. "Thank you both. Everything was exquisite from the nook to the finale. You've made this unforgettable." Smiles exchanged, a card slipped for future reservations. The door swings shut behind you, the night air crisp against your skin. There, in that imagined scene, you see it all converge. The A2 essentials, the table for two, please, the "I'd like the fish" as the sturdy scaffolding. The C1 flourishes, the piquant undertones, the "would it be terribly difficult" as the ornate filigree. Together, they don't just get you through a meal, they transform it into a symphony, a dialogue with the world. And that's the beauty of Sonic Sage English. We don't just teach words, we unlock worlds. Whether you're a beginner building that survival kit or an advanced learner polishing your performance, every episode is a step toward fluency that feels effortless, alive, and profoundly personal. So, as we finally dim the lights on this restaurant odyssey, I want to challenge you. Take one phrase, one nuance from today, maybe that sublime for your next coffee run, or the art of the imposition-free request, and wield it this week. Notice how it shifts the air, how it draws people in. Share your stories in the comments. I read everyone, and they fuel these explorations. If this episode ignited something in you, a hunger for more language, more confidence, more connection, hit that like button to let the algorithm know we're onto something special. Share it with a friend who's facing their own restaurant jitters, or that colleague dreaming of seamless business lunches abroad. And if you're not already part of our Sonic Sage family, subscribe now, it's free. It's fun, and it's packed with episodes like this, from street food slang to boardroom banter. Your support means everything. Likes amplify our reach, shares build our community, and comments, they spark the next big idea. From the bottom of my heart, thank you for dining with me today. Julia here, signing off from Sonic Sage English. Remember, every meal is a masterpiece waiting for your voice. Go forth, savor, and speak boldly. Until our next feast, bon appetit. And keep those English dreams sizzling. See you soon.